The air in the Nine Hells was an oppressive, searing force, thick with ash and brimstone. The horizon glowed with fiery rivers that carved through the jagged landscape, while the sound of infernal screams echoed like a cruel melody. Huan stood alone on a blackened plateau, his ragged breaths coming in bursts. His red eyes burned with an unyielding resolve as he gripped his great sword, the weapon's blade humming faintly with celestial magic. Around him, shadows shifted, and guttural growls reverberated in the air. 20 devils encircled him, their twisted forms rippling with malevolent energy. The first strike came without warning. A horned devil lunged forward, its barbed tail whipping through the air with lethal speed. Huan twisted his body, narrowly avoiding the strike, and retaliated with a powerful swing of his blade. The great sword cleaved through the devil's armored hide, releasing a spray of black ichor. The creature screeched and fell, but there was no time to savor the victory. Another devil, its form a writhing mass of serpentine limbs, closed in, snapping its fanged jaws. Huan's movements were precise yet brutal, a dance of survival honed by years of combat. He struck low, severing the creature's legs before plunging his blade into its chest. Yet for every devil he felled, 2 more seemed to take its place. Their claws raked against his armor, and fiery blasts singed his fur. Still he fought on, his body a whirlwind of steel and fury. Blood, both his own and the devil's, spattered the cracked ground, evaporating into steam in the heat. But Huan's strength was not infinite. As the battle raged, his muscles began to ache, and his movements grew heavier. A winged devil swooped down from above, raking its talons across his back. Huan snarled in pain and lashed out, severing its wings with a single strike. Yet, even as it fell, another devil, a hulking brute wielding a flaming mace, charged forward. The mace came crashing down, forcing Huan to block with his sword. The impact sent a jarring shock through his arms, and he stumbled, his footing unsteady. A sharp, excruciating pain tore through him as another devil seized the opportunity to attack from behind. Its claws gouged into his left eye, ripping away the last vestige of his vision on that side. Huan roared, a primal sound that shook the very ground beneath him. He spun around, decapitating his assailant with a ferocious swing, but the damage was done. Blood poured from the gaping wound, and his vision blurred, yet even blinded on one side, he refused to yield. "Is this all you have?" he growled, his voice a guttural snarl. "Come then, face me." The devils hesitated for a moment, their infernal instincts wary of the celestial fury before them. But then they surged forward as one, a tide of darkness and flame. Huan braced himself, his great sword flashing in the dim light as he cut through their ranks. Each swing was fueled by desperation and raw willpower, but the odds were overwhelming. His strikes grew slower, his breaths more labored. The devils clawed at him, tearing into his flesh and armor. He fell to one knee, his strength nearly spent. The devils, sensing that their prey was finally ready to fall, cried in glee as the largest devil of the group, with a wicked spiked chain spinning over its head, moved in for the final blow. But the prey quickly turned predator, and with a canine snarl, Huan charged with inhuman speed to slash the chain devil across the chest, then across the throat, putting it down definitively. This surprised the remaining horde, giving Huan another opening to cleave the arm off of the next devil, sending it spinning, screaming, and bleeding. But the sudden outburst took the last of Huan's energy out of him. His sword held not so high as before. As the tide of devils closed in, Huan prepared himself for the end. He would die on his feet, taking as many of these infernal creatures with him as he could. But just as the devils moved to deliver the final blow, a brilliant light erupted on the battlefield. The air shimmered with power, and a deafening roar split the heavens. "Enough!" The voice was commanding and laced with draconic authority. Cardor descended from the sky, his platinum wings unfurled and glowing with celestial energy. Beside him, Aelia emerged from the shadows, his green eyes blazing with arcane fire. The two allies joined the fray with devastating force. Cardor's long sword sliced through the devils with precision, while his disintegrating breath weapon incinerated those that dared approach him. Aelia wielded his magic with deadly efficiency, casting bolts of eldritch energy and summoning spectral blades that tore through the infernal horde. Together they turned the tide of battle. The devils, once so confident in their numbers, fell one by one under the combined might of the celestial warrior and the undead sorcerer. But even as they fought, Huan remained on the ground, his body broken and his spirit embittered. He watched as his companions dispatched the remaining devils, their arrival too late to spare him the agony he had endured. When the last of the devils had fallen, Cardor approached Huan, his expression both stern and concerned. "Huan," he said, his voice calm but firm, "let me heal you." Huan shook his head, his lone red eye blazing with resentment. "No, I don't need your help," his voice dripping his disdain. "You're gravely injured," Cardor insisted, his wings folding behind him. "If we don't tend to your wounds, you may not survive." "And whose fault is that?" Huan snapped, his voice laced with bitterness. "Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when they tore my eye from my skull?" Cardor's gaze faltered, but he did not respond. Aelia stepped forward, his voice calm but sorrowful. "Huan, we came as soon as we could," he said. "We did not abandon you." But Huan would not be placated. He struggled to his feet, using his great sword as a crutch. His body trembled with pain, but his pride refused to let him collapse. "Save your excuses," he growled. "I don't need your pity. I don't need your friendship. From now on, I fight alone." With that, he turned and began to walk away, his steps unsteady but resolute. Cardor and Aelia watched him go, their hearts heavy with guilt and sorrow. The light of the nine hells cast long shadows over the battlefield, and in the distance, Huan's silhouette disappeared into the ashen haze. Alone once more, his heart burned with a pain far deeper than any wound, a pain born of betrayal and loss, and the unyielding belief that he could trust no one but himself.